No, marijuana is not associated with violent crime because most stoners are playing extremely groovy music that causes the body to move in ways that are incongruent with armed robbery and such, despite the rantings of our anti-Mexican government of 1930. But then again, in another sense, marijuana is associated with violent crime, and when you consider that the U.S. business-minded and racist-motivated drug laws and drug wars empower much violence against the people, that is a crime. Whether it's the racist operations of cops who search and arrest and shoot more people of color than whites, or the sentences that are harder on people of color, or the types of penalties laid down for crimes mostly associated with people of color, or the statistics of how many people of color are in the prisons, we wonder what that scene would look like if you could not be arrested or searched for having marijuana or smoking it or smelling of it, etc. How many less cells filled? How many less prisons? How many less graves? When you consider that marijuana remains the third most popular recreational drug of choice in the United States despite 60 years of criminal prohibition and America's #1 cash crop after more than 3 decades of governmental eradication efforts, you have to wonder why so much energy is being spent pushing against the skunky waves of grain. According to the most recent data from the United States Department of Health and Human Services, 77% of U.S. citizens polled have only broken drug laws to smoke THC-bearing drugs like hash or marijuana. By this date, 13 states have passed laws granting use of medical marijuana. For various reasons, the people of the U.S. want their cannabis. The Mexican marijuana trade is flourishing because of this, and no crackdown on the border will change anything. How many millions more through swap meets like the Merida Initiative need to be dumped into surveillance gear or police training and ultimately violence to prove this? Over 15,000 human beings have lost their lives due to Felipe Calderon's drug war. The Justice Department claims that cartels operate in 195 U.S. cities and now simply buy and plant in fields within the U.S. to grow marijuana and avoid the border scrutiny altogether. This way, they can take the money they save on ramps and buy more snack food. Despite the removal of 6.6 million plants in the U.S. in 2001, border agents confess that the, quote, violence is happening because of the pressure we've exacted, but it does not fuel any increase or decrease in marijuana, end quote. In 1972, a blue-ribbon panel of experts appointed by President Richard Nixon and led by former Pennsylvania Governor Raymond Schaefer concluded that marijuana prohibition posed significantly greater harm to the user than the use of marijuana itself. This has borne out, and yet, like cavemen, our elders and statesmen and representatives pound their chests and talk of walls and looming laser-mounted fences to keep the cartel violence at bay. They suggest raids and police aggression and more violence to deal with a labor force that responds to our business demands. And they suggest walls and troops to deal with the drug supply that responds to our national Jones. Not cavemen, like madmen. What sense can be made of the billions wasted, the growing prisons, the tens of thousands dying in Mexico, the people who are denied relief from their pain? How on earth can you expect children to put their hand on their heart and pledge to the flag in a land that talks about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, but then acts to deny that pursuit and that liberty? A government that acts still on a law created by racists for racist purposes, and in doing so, still today aiding mass violence and extortion of thousands of people. The answer is right in front of us. We need to legalize marijuana. We need to steal the power from the cartels by legalizing transport and sale and use of marijuana, and then we need to tax and regulate it. What sense can be made of continuing to look at marijuana through the lens of the 1930s?